Congress will be briefed today on the intelligence that suggests Russia was paying bounties to kill U.S. service members in Afghanistan. This comes as a source tells CNN the White House was warned of the threat last year. Joining us now, CNN White House correspondent John Harwood and CNN senior law enforcement analyst Andrew McCabe, former deputy director of the FBI. As we look at all of what we've learned in the last 48, 72 hours, I've lost count at this point, about this intelligence, how it was put out there, how it was received or not received, the lack of action. And as you look at this, having been involved in intelligence and how this all plays out, the fact that this was in the Daily Brief, the fact that it was deemed, even if there was some discrepancy, as we heard from the White House, but it was still deemed important enough because it specifically involved U.S. troops. Just put that into context for us and what that would normally trigger in terms of a response.
Sure. So you should think of the President's Daily Brief as essentially the crown jewel of U.S. intelligence reporting. All intelligence is information for decision makers, and the President's Daily Brief is only the most important, the most highly classified, the most sensitive information that the community believes is essential for the President to know as he makes decisions about how to run the country, how to protect Americans, how to conduct diplomacy, all those sorts of things. There's all kinds of information that ends up in the PDB, economic intelligence, diplomatic intelligence, but by far the most important information in that product is threat intelligence, intelligence that tells us about threats directed at U.S. persons, or in this case, in military personnel overseas. A little bit about the PDB, the President's Daily Brief. It is actually a product that's produced every night. The staff works 24 hours a day. It is loaded then onto top secret, highly classified tablet computer devices, and those tablets are delivered to the President and to the other principals of the intelligence agencies who are entitled to see that material every morning. The briefers from the President's, from the PDB staff will typically sit down with the President or with the other principals and orally go over some of the material in the tablet. But the tablet typically contains anywhere from, let's say, 5 to 6 or 7 intelligence products. Those are usually articles that are a page or two long, so it's not hard to get through. It's specifically chosen to be matters of importance to the President and also things that the community knows the President will be interested in reading.
The White House was in the extraordinary position, Andy, of saying the President does read when asked if he reads his daily briefs. You were there. What was your experience on this front?
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. It's always good to know that your president reads. It's not entirely consistent with my own experience with preparing our directors to go to sit with the president, either in national security sessions or in homeland security sessions. In those cases where the FBI was responsible for briefing or presenting a particular issue, the question we always had was, what are we going to show him on video? It was widely known that if you wanted the President's attention, you had to bring a video with you to the brief, something animated, something with pictures. And if you did not have that, you probably would not get much engagement from the President on your issue.
John, in terms of engagement, we're learning now from the National Security Advisor that Robert O'Brien, that the President wasn't briefed at the time because they weren't corroborated. Apparently now he has been briefed. But it still raises the question of, in the White House, what are you hearing, John? What's your reporting in terms of the President's reaction to this intelligence? And if he has now been briefed, is there some impetus to take action?
Well, we can see what the president's reaction is because he's been tweeting it this morning. He says it's a hoax and it's fake news. Look, Erica, pretty much everything the White House has said about this incident is nonsense. And I think that we got to, we're accustomed as journalists to analyzing this through the frame of, well, what would a normal president do? What's this president doing? What's his strategy? Who's advising him? What's he going to do? It's impossible to ignore the conclusion that what we see with our own eyes leads us to what the testimony of his top former aides, Kelly, Mattis, Bolton, leads us to. And that is, this president is broken His White House is broken. He's not fit for the job. He's not doing the job. He's sitting there on his phone, ignoring the pandemic, stoking racism. And the best you can say about this particular situation, where he is simply trying to absolve himself from responsibility, is that he's indifferent to the welfare of American soldiers. And that's where we find ourselves, and that's why you're seeing the reaction from the American people on all these fronts, because the crises that are convulsing the United States right now, health crises, racial crises, he is actually making worse.
John, just to put a point on that, though, on the issue involving this intelligence that Russia was paying bounties to kill U.S. service members in Afghanistan, has the White House, the president, the Pentagon, anyone in the administration addressed the substance of the allegations? Has anyone done as much as to say, well, if they are true, then ...
No. And again, the president is saying that they're not true. We saw yesterday Liz Cheney, who's a member of the Republican leadership in the House, say that if these things are true, we need a swift and deadly response from the United States. You haven't heard anything close to that from the administration. The president, through his entire term of office, has been deferential to Vladimir Putin. He's taken actions which advance the interests of the Russian state, weakening NATO, dividing the Western alliance. It's quite obvious that he is not on the same page as the national security interests of the United States.
And as we look at all of that, the fact that there hasn't even been, as John just said, there hasn't been any of this, well, if it were true, here's what we would need to do moment. That also sends a big message to Vladimir Putin. Sorry, Andy, that was for you. I'm not sure if you can.
Oh, I heard you, Erica. So it absolutely does. And the idea that this president didn't see, didn't read, didn't focus on, didn't call a meeting about, didn't ask for more information about a direct threat to U.S. soldiers, and then conducted several interactions with the president of Russia without having taken those steps is absolutely unthinkable. To walk into those sorts of interactions without even the basic information you need to confront that, to confront President Putin about this threat is, I just can't, I can't imagine what he was possibly thinking.
Andy McCabe, John Harwood, thank you both very much for being with us. Appreciate your time on this subject.